Hello viewers, welcome to Kits Auto and Truck Repair. Today we have a 2017 Mercedes Sprinter with a 3.0 liter engine. The customer complaint on this vehicle is the check engine light remains on the dash while the engine is running. The customer also stated that the ADBLUE light is on the dash. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go in the vehicle so we can confirm the customer's complaint. After confirming the customer's complaint, we're gonna connect a scan tool to the vehicle so we can scan the engine computer to see what kind of trouble codes we have in the engine computer. So now let's go in the vehicle so we can confirm the customer's complaint. So as you can hear, the engine is running. So the check engine light is on the dash. We're gonna show you the dash right there. Check engine light is on. The DEF fluid light is on, or ADBLUE light is on. And there is a message on the dash. It just disappeared. There was a message that was saying start count. I think there were 6 start counts left. So customer's complaint confirmed. Now I'm gonna turn off the engine. This vehicle has 155,000 miles, 335. So now I'm gonna turn the key on. I already got the scan tool connected to the vehicle. So now let's scan the engine computer and see what we got. So this is a Mercedes. It's a 2017. Let's auto ID the vehicle. The scan tool has identified the vehicle, 2017 Mercedes Sprinter with a 3.0 liter engine. We're gonna click OK. So everything looks good so far. Let's do a code scan. Let's scan all the control units on the vehicle and see what we got. This is odd. There's no control unit, no systems detected. That's weird. Let me cycle the key on and off. This scan tool is messing up. Oh, you see right here, you see how this dongle, this light is not on? It means the scan tool module, this guy, went off. So I'm gonna make sure that this thing is on. Okay, so there is a green light that has to come on, and then the light is going to turn green first, and then it's going to turn blue. When it turns blue, that means that dongle is talking to the scan tool. You see how the light turned blue now, and we have it over here. So that's why we had 0 systems detected, because the module was not talking to the scan tool. So let's redo the same thing now and see what happens. Right there, 2017 Mercedes Sprinter, that's good. Code scan. This engine computer has a bunch of trouble codes. The ADBLUE field level is too low. Refer to OEM repair information for code description. The ADBLUE system has not yet been tested. The frequency counter, possible engine start is active. The ADBLUE system has not yet been tested. Frequency counter for tempering attempts on the ADBLUE system. So it looks like the ADBLUE system is not working, or hasn't worked in a while on this van. And then the other code is the ADBLUE system has not yet been tested. Frequency counter for tempering attempts on the ADBLUE system. Component A97/1 control unit of NOx sensor upstream of the SCR catalytic converter has an open circuit. So it looks like this code is the same as this one. So it's basically the same code listed twice. Component A97/1 control unit of NOx sensor upstream of SCR catalytic converter has a short circuit. So this same component, so this is the NOx sensor before the SCR. So the NOx sensor before the SCR is not working. We have the same code over here. NOx sensor upstream of the SCR is not ready for testing. Okay, interesting. Signal from component 70. So there is something I'm noticing here. Okay, we have about 4 codes about one specific component, which is the upstream NOx sensor. So the upstream NOx sensor could be defective, or the DEF injector may not be working, because if the DEF injector is not spraying any DEF fluid in the exhaust system, the SCR is not going to be able to work properly, because the way the ADBLUE system works is there's an ADBLUE pump in the ADBLUE tank. When the ADBLUE control unit decides to spray ADBLUE fluid or DEF fluid in the exhaust system to reduce NOx, and all of that is controlled by the engine computer. So the engine computer tells the ADBLUE control unit to open the ADBLUE injector to spray ADBLUE fluid in the exhaust system to reduce NOx. So the pump will turn on, ADBLUE fluid will move from the tank to the injector, and then the injector will open and spray DEF fluid in the exhaust system. There's a little device that mixes the fluid with the exhaust gases that go through the tube. When they get mixed, they go into the SCR. The SCR will reduce the NOx level. So when that happens, the engine computer is looking at the NOx parts per million reading of the first NOx sensor, and then it's going to compare it to that number on the second NOx sensor. So the first NOx sensor numbers should be high, and then the lower NOx sensor numbers should be lower. That's how the computer knows that the SCR is working properly. So we could have a bad sensor that's not telling the computer what the NOx level is before the SCR, or we could have the DEF injector that's not spraying the correct amount of DEF fluid in the exhaust system, because if the injector is not working, the NOx level won't be reduced. Okay, so that's pretty much how a DEF system works. I mean, kind of in a nutshell, how the DEF system works. So we have a bunch of codes over here, and all these codes are self-explanatory. This one, for example, I already read it, but I'm gonna reread it. Component A97/1, control unit of NOx sensor upstream of the SCR catalytic converter has an open circuit. So this sensor has a little computer on it. There's a little computer on the sensor. Now, this could be caused by a problem in the wiring between the sensor and that little computer, or the sensor itself could be bad. So we're gonna have to do a visual inspection under the vehicle to check the NOx sensors, to see how the NOx sensors look. And then we're also gonna have to check for the ADBLUE fluid level in the tank. Maybe the tank is empty. So now what I'm gonna do is, because we have a ADBLUE level trouble code here, ADBLUE level is too low. Maybe the ADBLUE tank is empty. I've seen people drive these vehicles without adding ADBLUE in the system, and that can cause all these issues. And then we have OEM specific codes after that. So let's scroll down and see what else we have. Well, we have one code in the electronic ignition switch. We have a couple codes in the signal acquisition module. So our scan tool has saved all these codes. I'm gonna notify the customer about these other codes, but right now in this video, we're gonna focus on the codes that we have in the engine computer. So on the generic side of the tool, we have two trouble codes. So these are the generic codes, which I like to look at and which are very easy to understand. So on the OBD side of the scan tool, we have code P2201, and it says NOx sensor circuit range / performance bank 1 sensor 1. So sensor 1 is the sensor before the SCR. And then here we have P2200 NOx sensor circuit bank 1 sensor 1. So it's the same code pretty much listed twice. Okay, now when you have a circuit performance code, the issue could be the sensor itself or the wiring of the sensor. Since we know that we have codes about the first NOx sensor on the exhaust stream, what I'm gonna do is I am going to go in the engine computer and clear all these codes. As you can see, we have a bunch of codes here. I'm gonna clear all of them. at this point I already have an idea about how I'm gonna go about fixing this. So I'm gonna clear all these codes. Let's read the codes again. After clearing them, let's see if there's any codes right now. So after clearing the codes, we're down to 4 codes. These are OEM specific codes. Okay, now let's go to data. Let's see if we have some ADBLUE data PIDs. Check sensors, SCR. Let's go to SCR. Let's see what data PIDs we have in the SCR data group. Engine, mass flow. I'm trying to look at exhaust temperature upstream, NOx concentration downstream of SCR, NOx concentration. Now, for the NOx sensors to start working, the engine has to be at operating temperature. What I want to do now is I would like to check the level of the ADBLUE fluid in the ADBLUE tank. I want to see if there's a data PID for ADBLUE level. High pressure particulate filter. Let me back out. Let's see if we have the ADBLUE control unit listed here, because if we go into the ADBLUE control unit, we might be able to see the level. So I'm looking for this one, selective catalytic reduction ADBLUE. So let's click on this. So now we're going into the ADBLUE control unit. Let's read the codes. No codes in this control unit. Let's go to data. Right here, fill level of ADBLUE tank. Right now it says status of ADBLUE level is full. Now, is that correct? I've seen these data PIDs on the scan tool say full while the ADBLUE tank is empty. So I don't know if we are to trust this data PID. ADBLUE level of, fill level of ADBLUE tank is 16.27 liter. I don't know if I have ADBLUE fluid here. I don't have ADBLUE fluid. We're gonna have to buy ADBLUE fluid and check. Actually, let's go under the hood. I'm gonna open the ADBLUE tank cap to see if I can see fluid in it, and then we're gonna take this vehicle on a test drive to see if our NOx sensors will start working, because we have to get to operating temperature for the NOx sensors to work. Because the customer told me that the vehicle drives well, it seems to drive fine. The only issue is the light that remains on. So at this point, with the codes that we saw, our issue could just be the first NOx sensor. The first NOx sensor could be bad, the NOx sensor before the SCR. So we have to do some tests to determine that that's the issue, that's the only thing that the vehicle needs, and then we're gonna replace it. So, and also I wanted to give a shout out to the owner of this vehicle, who is one of our subscribers, Mr. Lou. He drove all the way from Baltimore to bring his vehicle to us. So Mr. Lou, I appreciate you. And also shout out to our cameraman Matt, for being here. So we're gonna go under the hood and check the ADBLUE level, and after that we're gonna go on a test drive. Now, before we go on a test drive, I have a favor I need to ask you guys. I appreciate all of you for watching the videos, liking the videos, subscribing, but if you are not a subscriber yet, we were going through the analytics, and YouTube tells us that there is a lot of you that watch our videos but are not subscribers. So you watch the videos but you're not subscribing. Why? Please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for helping us. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for liking the videos. So if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. As you subscribe, Matt and I will make sure that we bring great content to you. So please subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you. So now let's go under the hood. So here is the depth cap. Sometimes if you look down here, if there's enough fluid, you can see. I don't see any fluid here. Okay, so let me see if I have DEF fluid here. I usually keep I usually keep a box or two in stock. Okay, I don't have them. We're gonna have to go buy some DEF fluid. If I had DEF fluid, I was gonna add DEF fluid to make sure that the tank is full, and then we were gonna go on a test drive. So now what we're gonna do is, let's go on a test drive. I'm gonna close the hood. Let's go on a test drive, and what I'm gonna do when we go on a test drive, I'm going to graph both NOx sensor data PIDs, the NOx sensor upstream of the SCR and the NOx sensor downstream of the SCR. We're gonna watch the numbers as we are driving. So let's go in the vehicle. Now, I couldn't really see if we have enough DEF fluid in the DEF tank. So I'm just gonna go based on what we have here on the scan tool. The scan tool says that the level of the ADBLUE is full. So let's back out. I wanna look at my NOx sensor data PIDs. Hold on. Test values while driving. Let's see what we have there. Exhaust temperature upstream of SCR. Okay, this is not what I want to look at. Now, here's another thing I would like to do before we go on a test drive. I want to turn on the ADBLUE injector on the exhaust stream to see if it's coming on. Usually when you turn it on, you can hear it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to functional test. I'm going to go to actuator test. Let me turn on the ADBLUE delivery pump first. I can hear it. Do you hear the noise under the vent? Yeah, so yeah, I turned on the ADBLUE pump. I can hear the pump running under the vent, so that's good. That tells me that the pump is most likely good. Now I'm going to turn on the ADBLUE mirroring valve. This is the injector. Right there. There's a clicking noise coming from under the vent. So that's good. That tells me that the mirroring valve is most likely working, the injector. Now, the noise doesn't always mean the valve is working. The fact that it's clicking, this tells me that the circuit of the valve is good. Even when we turned on the pump was clicking. I mean, the pump was making noise. That also tells me that, you know, the circuit, the wiring is good. The pump is also most likely good, because we don't have a pump trouble code. We also don't have a mirroring valve trouble code. I'm just checking them to rule them out of the way as possible causes. So we're good there. So now let's go back to the engine computer. I'm gonna graph my NOx sensor data PIDs. There are two NOx sensors on this vehicle. So we're gonna go to SCR. We're gonna graph the NOx concentration upstream of SCR catalytic converter. So we're gonna graph this, and then we're gonna graph the second one. So this is the sensor before the SCR, and this is the sensor that's setting up a trouble code. And then the other one is NOx concentration downstream, NOx concentration downstream of SCR catalytic converter. So we're gonna graph the second one. We're gonna go on a test drive. We're gonna get the engine to operating temperature, and then we will see if our NOx sensors graphs will start updating on the scan tool. Now, I've had sensors in some sprinters where my scan tools will not update. Like I used the Snap-on scan tool, it wouldn't update. I used the Autel scan tool, it wouldn't update. For some reason, I drove the van, and I'm not talking about this van, I'm talking about a van that I worked on a while ago. I was driving, I was trying to compare the value of the NOx sensor before the SCR and the value of the NOx sensor after the SCR. I mean, the rule of thumb is you should have more parts per million on the first NOx sensor and then less parts per million on the second NOx sensor, because the SCR is between those two sensors. So if you have more NOx coming out of the engine and entering the SCR, if the ADBLUE system works well, the second NOx sensor parts per million should be lower, because the SCR is going to break down those NOx as the exhaust gases go through the SCR. So let's go on a test drive. Hopefully that's going to update, but if it doesn't update, when we come back, we might have to do some tests at the NOx sensor wiring, and then if the wiring checks out fine, we might have to replace the sensor, because this looks like it's just going to be something easy. Now, when we go on a test drive, we're also going to stop by the store and get more ADBLUE fluid, more DEF fluid, because I don't have any at the shop. Now, when the customer dropped it off, I asked him if the vehicle was losing power. He said the van was driving fine. The only concern was the light. So I believe this is probably just gonna need a sensor. The NOx sensor is probably just the only issue this van has, but we have to do some testing and make sure that that's the only issue that this van has. Now, 155,000 miles is nothing on these sprinters, especially if you take good care of them. They can go for so many miles. Okay, so let's go. We are on the road right now. We're driving. The van drives fine. I'm looking at the scan tool right now as we're driving. So the sensors are still showing 0, 0. This is probably because the engine is not really warmed up yet. Okay, so we're gonna keep driving. I don't think we have to film the entire test drive. I mean, the van drives well, it's good. I'm gonna keep watching the NOx sensors, and when they start reading, I will bring you guys back up so we can show you the readings on the NOx sensor. We're also gonna stop by the parts store and get some DEF fluid, and then we'll bring you guys back up.
So what is a NOx sensor?
What is a NOx sensor?
Yeah.
Oh, great question, Matt. So cameraman Matt just asked, I hope you guys heard his question. Matt just asked, what is a NOx sensor? Well, a NOx sensor measures the amount of NOx gases that we have in the exhaust system. So what is NOx? Okay, NOx stands for oxides of nitrogen. It's a gas that is harmful. It kills trees. It's not good for, I think, for the ozone layer. It's a bad gas. But NOx is basically a byproduct. It's a gas that's a byproduct of the heat that occurs in the cylinder, because when the cylinder gets hot, it forms NOx gases. Now, those NOx gases sometimes are elevated while the engine is running. It's just a byproduct of the combustion engine. When the engine is running, the engine gets hot, and then NOx gases are formed. Now, car manufacturers don't want NOx gases to be coming out of the tailpipe because they're gonna pollute the air. So they have created systems like after treatment systems to reduce the level of NOx gases, because there is a acceptable level of NOx gases that should be let out in the atmosphere. But if it's too much, it's going to cause problems. So they have added ADBLUE systems in the exhaust system. So that ADBLUE system reduces the NOx level. That's why we have DEF fluids in these diesel trucks. So NOx is basically the byproduct of diesel engines cylinders being hot. So NOx is oxides of nitrogen. I think it's oxygen and nitrogen, I think, mixed. Yeah, there are a bunch of chemical formulas about it. As you guys can tell, I'm not a chemist. I just know a little bit about that, but that's what NOx is, okay? So, yes, Matt, please keep asking those questions, because I'm sure someone in our audience is going to benefit from the questions you ask. So we might have to get you a mic so you can ask those questions and everybody can hear you. Okay, so we are at the store. We're going to go get some ADBLUE fluid. We came to Tractor Supply. We're going to get some DEF fluid. I'm also out of it at the shop, so I'm gonna get a couple boxes. So I believe, I mean, I've come here multiple times, so DEF fluid will be back there. Oh, hold on. Actually, I need this. I need some shop towel. I'm gonna grab 2. And oh, I also need some. Remember when we were working on the yellow sprinter? I ran out of this. I'm gonna get 3. And then I also need starting fluid. Okay, we need it every once in a while. Okay, what else do I need? Okay, here's what I need. Okay, DEF, diesel exhaust fluid. So I'm gonna grab, now these boxes have a shelf life. You don't wanna stock a lot of it. I usually just buy 2 and then I add them as I go, because you don't wanna stock too many at the shop, because if they last too long at the shop, they can go bad. So they have a shelf life. So 2 should be good for now. And then if we go through all these 2, we can come back and buy more, because we're not far from the store. So we should be good. That's all we need. Actually, let me grab a small funnel, because the funnel we have at the shop, someone broke it. You know, we can add the fluid while we are here in the parking lot, just to make sure that our ADBLUE system is topped off, and then we're gonna continue driving, you know. Yeah, so I'm gonna get checked out, and then I'll bring you guys back up as we get to the parking lot, so we can add DEF fluid in the tank. All right, so we're done with our shopping. Now let's go put this in the vehicle. Now maybe the scan tool was right. The ADBLUE tank could be full, but I'm going to add just a little bit. So let's put our stuff in the van first. Actually, the owner of this vehicle told me that he's gonna turn this van into a camper. So he wants it to be ready to go, so he can turn it into a camper. He's gonna put a bed in there, a little kitchen. So it should be nice. So now I'm gonna open this. Let's open the hood. Now it looks like someone spilled a lot of ADBLUE fluid over here. You see this white crusty stuff? This is ADBLUE fluid that got spilled here. All right, so now let's put ADBLUE fluid in the ADBLUE tank. Oh, actually it was full. Oh, check this out. Yeah, so the scan tool was right. The ADBLUE thing is full. This is gonna make a mess here. Well, I'll clean this when we get to the shop. Okay, so the ADBLUE system is full. I'm gonna wipe this down. Actually, you see all this ADBLUE fluid we have here. When it dries, it's going to make all this like crystal stuff that you see down here. But you can clean this with water actually. So when we get to the shop, I'm gonna use water to clean up this entire area, okay? So this is fine. So now, one thing we know is that our ADBLUE system has fluid in it. We're good. Let's drive it for about 20 or 25 minutes to see if our NOx sensors will start showing us numbers on the scan tool. So I'm gonna close the hood. Now let's continue our test drive. All right, we are driving. The van drives well. The DEF light is still on the dash. I'm looking at the scan tool, but our NOx sensor data PIDs on the scan tool are not updating. They're stuck at 0. So now I wonder if our sensors are not working, or if it's the scan tool that's not updating. You know, maybe the scan tool is not giving us that info. I've had that in the past where the Snap-on scan tool for some reason would not show me the parts per million values coming from the NOx sensors. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna drive back to the shop. I'm gonna switch scan tools. I'm gonna connect my RTL scan tool to the vehicle, and then we're gonna keep test driving the van, because what I wanna do is, remember we had 2 codes on the generic side of the tool, and the codes were about the first NOx sensor 1, sensor 1. So I think the first NOx sensor is defective, but I wanted to see the readings coming out of it before we replace it, okay? Now, we're not just gonna replace the sensor, we have to check the wiring, make sure the wiring is good, and then we're gonna replace the sensor. So I wanted to make sure that I could get the reading at least out of the good sensor, which is the sensor after the SCR. So I wanted to compare both readings from the first sensor and the second sensor. But right now, as we're driving, Matt, if you can show everyone the scan tool one more time. As you can see, our NOx sensor graphs are not updating. So they're stuck at 0. Now, actually, I think that one moved. Do you see that? Okay, so I think that's the one after the cat. So the one after the catalytic converter moved. So we don't have to switch scan tools. So it's working. So it just takes a little while then. The second NOx sensor is working, but the first one is not. So I guess the system was not warm enough. Yeah, so the first one is working, but the second one is stuck at 0. So that could be a sensor issue, you know. So yeah, so now what I'm gonna do is, let's drive for a little bit longer. We are back at the shop right now. We are in our shop's parking lot. I was gonna grab my phone. I left my phone at the shop. I'm gonna grab my phone because we're gonna go to the dealership to pick up some stuff. So we're gonna drive the van to the dealership as part of our test drive, and then we will continue to monitor our NOx sensor values. So now the fact that let's show this, let's show the scan tool again. The fact that this one here is working, but this one is not. This over here clearly has a problem. This sensor is not working. As you can see, that one has numbers on it. The first one, the second one is working. That is NOx concentration downstream of SCR catalytic converter. So the downstream NOx sensor is working, but the upstream NOx sensor is not working. So now what I'm gonna do is we're gonna keep driving, okay? We're gonna keep driving and then we'll see what happens. So if that still does not update, we're going to replace the sensor. After we check the wiring of the sensor, if the wiring checks out okay, we're gonna replace the sensor. So let's continue driving. We're gonna go on a test drive. I'm just gonna pick up my phone from the shop and then we're gonna continue driving. As we are driving, I noticed that, let me grab the scan tool. So I hope you guys can see. Sorry for the glare. As we are driving, it took a while. We've been driving for what, 25 minutes? After 25 minutes, now the NOx sensor before the SCR is now updating. So we have values on this NOx sensor. Now, this is the first NOx sensor before the SCR. This is the second NOx sensor. The fact that the second NOx sensor has a very low value, as you can see, the second NOx sensor has a value of about 12. It's going between 12 and 15 parts per million. This tells me that the SCR is working. Okay?
Agreed.
Look at how much NOx we have on the first one. So we have a lot of NOx on the first sensor, but we have, let me stop here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find, because we're driving, so we don't want to crash. Let me stop in this parking lot. It feels like the first NOx sensor is taking longer to start reading or start working. Let me grab the scan tool. So right here, can you see this? Yeah, so right now it's working, okay? The fact that this sensor is working, this tells me that the wiring of the sensor is good. The sensor is lazy. It's taking too long to start working. So the second NOx sensor is working well. So you see how we have about, this is going between 900 and 1200, sometimes 1500 parts per million, but we have 9. So the one after the SCR is going between 9 and 10 parts per million. So the SCR is working, so it's doing its job. It's reducing the NOx level. So second sensor is good, SCR is good. The first sensor is taking too long to start working. So this is a lazy NOx sensor. I mean, you guys saw it. This one started working first, and then a lot long after that, then this one started coming up to life. They should start working at the same time. So this sensor is bad. So we're gonna continue working. I'm gonna put the scan tool right there. We're gonna continue driving. We're going to the dealership to pick up some stuff. You know, we're kind of killing two birds with one stone. We're test driving this. We're gonna go to the dealership to pick up stuff. Now I know at this point, I can say with 100% surety that that sensor, it's like having a O2 sensor that's lazy. It's like having a lazy O2 sensor. It's like having a lazy O2 sensor that takes a long time before it starts to work. That's basically the same thing here. So we're gonna drive, we're gonna get back to the shop, we're gonna test the circuit of the sensor. I know it's good, but we're just gonna test it. And then we're gonna put a new NOx sensor on this one, the first NOx sensor, and this is gonna be fixed. We know we have enough DEF fluid in the tank, so we're good. We're gonna drive to the dealership. We don't have to show you the drive. I mean, I already have enough evidence right now on the scan tool to make the call. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah, right there. We already have enough evidence on the scan tool to make the call. Our sensors are working. The first one is taking too long. So I'm gonna bring you guys back up once we get back to the shop. We're gonna replace the first NOx sensor, and this is gonna be good to go. So see you guys at the shop. We are back at the shop. This vehicle needs a NOx sensor. The first NOx sensor needs to be replaced. I did call the Mercedes dealership off camera. They told me that they do not have the NOx sensor in stock. They're gonna have to order it, and it's gonna take about 3 days to get. So we're gonna wait for 3 days before we get the sensor for this van. Now, before we replace the sensor, we have to check the wiring. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna go under the vehicle and check the wiring of the NOx sensor. I'm pretty sure the wiring is good, but we have to check it to be 100% sure before we install the NOx sensor. So we're gonna go under the hood and check the NOx sensor wiring. If the wiring checks out okay, we're gonna get the sensor and install it. we saw the graphs of both NOx sensors when we were driving. The first NOx sensor is taking longer to start updating. So it took a while for the first NOx sensor to start working. So that sensor is defective. Let's check the wiring, and after that, we're going to replace the sensor. So now let's go under the vehicle so we can do that. This is the NOx sensor before the SCR. So this is NOx sensor 1, sensor 1. So if we follow this wire, it goes behind this little heat shield. Now I removed the bolt that holds this heat shield up off camera. So I'm going to lower this heat shield so we can get access to the NOx sensor control unit. So this box that you see over here, this little rectangular box, this little aluminum box, this is the computer for the NOx sensor. Now, this sensor has 4 wires on it. There are 4 wires on this electrical connector on the vehicle side. So we should have power and ground going to this control unit, and then the other 2 wires will be the communication wires. So I already back probed all these wires off camera, and this computer is bolted on the vehicle frame by 2 10mm nuts. Okay, so we got all those wires back probed. So now I'm gonna show you the lab scope screen. So we're gonna use all our 4 channels on the lab scope. So we're gonna go to scope multimeter. So we have all 4 channels turned on. So let's see some digital numbers here. So right now with the key off, we have minus 0.02 volt on the yellow trace, and then we have 0.04 volt on the green trace, and 0.0 volt on the blue trace, and minus 0.006 volt on the red trace. So now I'm gonna go in the vehicle and turn the key on. So I want you guys to watch the lab scope screen. I'm gonna go turn the key on. Now when I turn the key on, if the wiring of the NOx sensor is good, one of these traces will go up to system voltage, and then the other one will be sensor ground, and then the other 2 will be the communication waveform for the sensor. I have turned the key on in the vehicle. As you can see, our blue trace and red trace are our communication waveforms, and then the green trace has system voltage, and then yellow trace is sensor ground. So this over here tells me that the wiring of the NOx sensor is good, and this is what I was expecting. Okay, so our data packets look good, so we're good to go. At this point we can go ahead and replace the sensor. The wiring is good, so bad sensor. That sensor is taking too long to update. So we are done with our diagnosis. We're good. So the wiring of the sensor is good. We are done with our diagnosis. Checking the wiring of the sensor was pretty straightforward. There is communication going to the sensor. We saw our communication waveform at the sensor connector. The sensor is getting good power and good ground. It should be working. The fact that it's taking longer to start updating, that tells us that the sensor is bad. We're gonna have to replace the sensor. Now, since we can't find the sensor right now, the dealership doesn't have it, we have to get the sensor from the dealer, and they told us that we have to wait 3 days. So we're gonna wait for 3 days until we get the sensor. When we get the sensor, I will bring you guys back up. Now, as all of you know, when it comes to electrical and electronic devices on these Mercedes Sprinters, I don't do aftermarkets, okay? I'm not gonna go to Advanced Auto or Napa or AutoZone to get the sensor. Now, I know those sensors might work, but I always do OEM parts when it comes to Sprinter vans. So Mercedes, BMW, pretty much most European vehicles, when I work on them, I always recommend OEM components when it comes to electrical and electronic components. So we're gonna end this right over here. We will bring you guys back up once we get the sensor. We're gonna install the new sensor, and this is gonna be fixed. Actually, we might have to take this on a test drive again so you can see the difference between the new sensor and the old sensor, because when we're gonna install the new sensor, I'm sure the new sensor is gonna start updating faster. So we'll bring you guys back up once we get the new sensor.